And welcome to another edition of Civic Affairs with your anchors as always, Alex Parr and Andy Martens. Andy, are you ready to kick the show off on the right foot?
I am. Another big show.
We're joined by the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce for Sault Ste. Marie, Rory Ring. Rory, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thanks very much for having me on.
And thanks for being on. So I'm going to pass it over to Andy now with the first hot seat question.
All right. Thanks, Rory. Appreciate you being here. The Bridge Walk is coming up on June 23rd. You mentioned that you and I have talked before that everything that's going on with the steel tariffs and thing, it's important to liaise with Michigan to find solutions to this problem.
Absolutely, and the Bridge Walk coming up is a good way to show solidarity between our two communities, and we're highly integrated with each other. And if you just look at the amount of trade and commerce that goes on between our communities that's related to steel, the supply chain in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario was about $120 million spent by Algoma, and it's 5 times that in the United States. It's coal, it's ore, there's also services. So it is a very significant relationship that we've had for a very long time, and I think a Bridge Walk is a good way to show that we are marching on the same path together, which is really jobs for both our communities. And after 32 years of running the International Bridge Walk, what better time to do it than now, where there's a little bit of a little tiff going on between our families.
Exactly.
And you've also made note it's important to mobilize Michigan. What exactly does that mean?
Well, it means that we need to contact all our political representatives at all levels of government to make sure that they understand the impacts that tariffs have on our ability to generate economic prosperity for us. A family in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario is a family in Sault, Michigan, is a family in Toledo, Ohio, is a family in Brampton, is a family in Niagara, and it goes on, right? I mean, we're all trying to just provide a good style of living for ourselves, and trade between our two countries as very much a balanced trade, right? And this notion that there's a deficit or a massive surplus on either side is actually just not the reality of it. We trade very evenly. It'll fluctuate a little bit here and there, of course, but that's just the nature of trade.
Great. Yeah, that's the thing, and I would just add something to that. They need to listen to Michigan, because Michigan is a state that they need in the next election.
Absolutely. Michigan, Florida. I mean, if you actually just take a look at the list of retaliatory measures that Canada took and that the EU has taken, it very much is targeted at those states where the presidency is really garnered some support. So you really need to take a look at how much impact from a political perspective that retaliatory measures can take on an economy, really.
Roger Brooks made a presentation in the last couple of weeks, and I watched the presentation. As CEO and President of the Chamber of Commerce, what did you feel that his recommendations, he felt that the one-way streets were just out of touch, 40 years behind times, belonged in the 70s, and also the signage. Do you have some feedback to his recommendations on those?
Yeah, there are 99 recommendations. I like to say it's 99 recommendations on the wall, right? So one of those recommendations were to be dealt with, there's 98 recommendations on the wall. So there's a lot of great recommendations, a lot of quick wins that are very affordable. Obviously, Roger is a professional and an expert in the things that he does, and I think we need to take his recommendations very seriously. And what it really is about creating a proactive environment for attracting people to our community. And there's some very subtle things that can be done to help solidify our relationship with visitors to the city, and that will help generate tourism, that can help generate economic prosperity for our downtown, making downtown the center of our city once again. And things like just stop studying, right, and just make it happen. Right. We've done a lot of studies. We know we have a community investment plan for downtown. We have a downtown strategic plan. We have a downtown association that has its strategic plan. Now it's time to mobilize and to make some things happen. And I think the presentation by Roger could be a real catalyst around making that happen. Many of those businesses that are downtown are chamber members, right? So we feel that there's an obligation for us to also represent the small businesses. And all these, they are very small businesses, right? They maybe have 5 or less employees. So, you know, it's very important for us to make some advances there.
Great.
And well, guys, we'll be back with more from the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, Sault Ste. Marie, Rory Ring, right after a quick break. And I wouldn't lie to you, as promised, we're still sitting here with Rory Ring, as always. Thankful you came in. Now, we got your thoughts before the break on the signage, how it's going to affect tourism, people getting downtown. What do your fellow chamber members feel about it? What are their feelings about everything?
Well, I think, you know, when you take a look at our members that are downtown, very positive reaction. I mean, obviously, creating a positive environment for a positive experience is key to bringing people downtown. And activating your downtown is very key. So being welcoming is a good thing. And sometimes we just get used to putting things the way they are, and we forget about how somebody from out of town might view those very subtle inferences that can be done through signage. And you know what? The other side of the coin is that many people that are visiting us are aging. It's the demographics. You know, trifocals, progressive lenses, you know, and a sign that big, I'm not going to see it. So, I mean, it really is. Just keep it simple. Simple is good, and make it attractive for people to look at. And if you activate your downtown, it'll bring in more businesses, you know, which tend to be those small, medium-sized enterprises that create economic prosperity, right?
And also before the break, you were mentioning how there is an action plan on how we're going to get more people back downtown. What is something you'd like to see implemented as soon as possible, something you guys have talked about?
So I think there's, you know, a commitment to providing the right kind of infrastructure that helps foster a return on investment. I mean, obviously, we expect the city to invest in our downtown, but it also has to be investments that will yield a positive return, which means bringing your community together, bringing tourism in, and activating your downtown. So simple things like cleaning up the grass and the weeds, you know, simple things like fixing up the tree boxes that are there, or maybe adding a little splash of color to, you know, just to make it a little more lively. There's
Just
some
that
very
extra
immediate,
TLC to throw into the downtown
just a little
area.
TSC, you know, right off the bat shows a positive advancement, positive images, and you know, creates a little more positive atmosphere.
Right, it shows that if the city's willing to take the initiative to make it look nice, that there's a reason to be down there to go look and see what's
Absolutely, you know, and there's
about.
some simple solutions too from regulation. Like, I don't know if you know, but if you want to put a flower box out in front of your store, you have to get a permit. That permit's only good for 12 days. You know, that doesn't make any sense. So we've had these conversations, the Downtown Association and our group within the community development regime, that, you know, these are things that are simple. They're simple fixes, right? I mean, yeah, you got to do the process to get them in front of council, but at the end of the day, you know, if you want flower boxes, why don't you make it seasonal, right? From May to November, where you can start to transition spring, summer, and fall. You know, very simple solutions.
Right, I was going to say, those are very simple ideas, but just to see it from now to having all those flower boxes, to having that painting, it's going to be a world of a difference, especially for us who live here and see it almost on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, Andy?
Rory, are you happy with the way things have gone with the chamber and the chamber members since you've been here, the economy, and where the downtown is in 2018 since you've been here?
Well, you know, it's been about 2.5 years, Andy, and it's probably, from my perspective, probably 2.5 of the most challenging years that perhaps this community has been through. Coming from Sarnia-Lambton, we very much had a very similar experience with when many of the jobs from the petrochemical industry migrated to Texas, Pittsburgh, Louisiana, and also back over to Europe. So there was some shrinkage in the population of the community. There was a brain drain because most of those jobs were in research. So, you know, it's not something that I'm unfamiliar with, and it is a real challenge. But obviously, you know, it's a bit of a different mix because of the isolation of Sault Ste. Marie, you know, from very larger urban centers, right? The nearest community is three hours away in Sudbury. So, you know, there's a bit of a challenge there. So, you know, trying to keep everybody engaged and keep everybody positive with the challenges is being a very difficult, and it is being strenuous when, You look at public policy in the last few years, cap and trade,
Right.
Bill 148, increases in minimum wage, increased red tape associated with many of those programs. The federal government looking at reviewing its tax implications with professional services. So there's been a lot of this, business is not good, business is not friendly, business is evil even to a certain degree. So there's been a lot of that has to be overcome, and it has had its impact on our membership. People are reluctant to release money and invest their capital. They're watching every single penny they can, because they deserve to make a living too. I mean, there's businesses out there that don't make minimum wage, those owners. For 3 to 5 years, they may not even make a wage, and continually reinvesting back in their business. So that's a difficult message to get out into the public as well.
Do you think things will change with the new premier who will be sworn in at the end of the month? With the way Ontario's open for business, do you anticipate a better 4 years coming up?
Yeah, well, the time will only tell, but obviously we've seen a very positive, from our perspective as a chamber membership, the elimination of cap and trade. Obviously we have to take a look at what that means from a federal perspective, but that means our businesses will be now more competitive. The cost of electricity, which has cap and trade components to it, the cost of natural gas has cap and trade, the cost of gasoline. If you think about the infrastructure in Northern Ontario and how much it's reliant on ground transportation and aviation, those two very, very significant fuel-based tax implications from cap and trade are very, very significant. Sault Ste. Marie, we've estimated, will have withdrawn from its community under the cap and trade system $25 million annually.
Just that.
Annually. Just that is
yeah.
staggering, right?
Wow.
And it's the residents that are paying, it's the businesses that are paying. So everybody's paying. So the elimination of that hopefully will reduce the cost to the residential components. It'll make businesses more competitive. And overall, we should see the economy grow.
Great. Thanks very much, Rory.
Yes, and I'm going to thank you myself, Rory. I'm going to thank you, Andy, as well, because we're wrapping it up with Rory, and we appreciate it, as always, for coming on. But we got Fire Chief Peter Johnson coming on next, and I couldn't be any more excited. So stay tuned, and he'll be joining us right after this break. And welcome to the second half of this edition of Civic Affairs with myself, Alex, Andy, and our guest, Mr. Peter Johnson. How are you doing? He's the fire chief here in Sault Ste. Marie.
Hi, how are you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
So,
Peter.
You've been employed there. You've had this title since May 2017. Is that correct?
I was actually August 1st of 2017, I was appointed fire chief.
Okay, well, that's
Yep.
even later than I assumed. So there may be people in the area that aren't familiar with yourself. So what's your background? Where are you from? What have you been doing? And how did you get this job?
All right, well, my background is I was born and raised in Sault Ste. Marie.
Okay.
And once I graduated high school, I attended University of Windsor. I studied Bachelor of Arts. And then I decided that maybe I needed a little shift. So someone introduced me to the fire industry. And I attended Fire Academy in Detroit, Michigan. And once I graduated from there, I came back home and attended Lake Superior State University and pursued a fire science degree. And I was fortunate enough to get hired at the local fire department.
There's actually a lot of schooling involved in all this.
It was, yeah, and that was in '95, so I worked my way through the ranks in the fire service, from probationary firefighter to firefighter, driver, captain, and then I was deputy fire chief in 2015.
Okay.
And in 2017, I was promoted to fire chief.
So you paid your dues all the way
Yes.
up to where you are now, and that's
Yeah.
a great story to say.
Yeah.
So,
So
Andy.
where were you before you came here then? Where were you fire chief at?
No, I was always here. My
Okay.
career was 23 years. I've been in the fire
Okay,
service
you've been
and
here, yeah.
all in Sault
Great.
Ste. Marie.
Did you ever do any firefighting for like forest fires, getting sent out on like location? I know a lot of people that start in firefighting do take that route. Well, they'll go get flown out to wherever it may be, go help fight that forest fire.
It is common, but I didn't ever experience that. But that is a common path. But for me, I went the education route, and it worked out well for
Well, I
me.
mean, you're here on TV
Yeah.
right now, right? So I guess it didn't work
It's
out all
great
so
to
bad.
see somebody promoted within. Yes, that's a rarity.
From
these
the
days.
Sioux and
Yeah.
in the Sioux.
Wonderful. Peter, what are some of the challenges you found since August of last year as chief during the time you've been chief here?
Yeah, you know, there's been a number of challenges. I think relationship building, I find it easy to build relationships, but I have pockets of relationships as a chief, right? I have relationships that I have to build with the firefighters, the Firefighters
Right.
Association, council, the mayor, the fire marshal, my staff at the administration level. So I've got pockets of relationships, and I have to find a way to make them all blend and work together. And sometimes that can be a challenge because there's slightly different variations to each relationship.
Yeah, as people say, you can't please everybody.
That's right.
Exactly, right?
Well, and I've heard too, you've done a great job you were here when the previous chief was there and all
Yeah.
that went, you know, I'm talking about the past, but you've rebuilt since August.
Yeah.
You know, the department is back to where it should be, quite frankly.
Yeah, we know through working with council and the mayor and the CAO and my senior management, we have a great team, and we recognized what we had to build from. We learned from those years what was working, what wasn't working, what needed to be fixed. And we've got a great program now in place. We completed our comprehensive risk assessment.
Right.
We have a master fire plan, which is our strategic document that we can follow. And a lot of the pieces of that puzzle start to come together as I move through this first year.
And speaking risk assessments, excuse me, moving forward, how often are these going to be done, and are there any shortfalls that come with these?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, beginning in 2019, there's going to be some changes to the fire service. There's some different mandates that the fire marshal will be implementing, and every municipality will actually be required to do a risk assessment every 5 years.
Okay.
So that'll, now that we're ahead of it now, we have ours done, so in 5 years we'll have another look at it, and we'll revisit what we're doing, how we're doing it, what improvements we can make. On an annual basis, we'll do what we call a simplified risk assessment, where it's just a quick overview, look at calls that we had, types of responses, our deployment, what our staffing is, and we'll try to make a plan on what we've got locally and how we can mitigate those types of calls in our area. And what we'll try to do is, through our prevention and education division, target areas of what we see if there's specific cooking fires, or maybe there's unattended cooking, which is, you know, one of the
just
leading
had one,
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah. So if we see pockets of those types of calls happening, our prior prevention division will put programs together, and we'll kind of do a blitz in that area and do an education push, and hopefully lower those calls.
And you're right, you're exactly right. It is important to go and do that education piece for your staff to get out there.
It is the 3 lines of defense, which is a big push through the fire marshal's office, and kind of the direction that the fire service is heading is front and center for us. And those 3 lines are, you know, public education being number 1, safety and code enforcement number 2, and emergency response number 3.
Are the staffing levels back up to where they were prior to, you know, the
realignment,
yeah, the realignment that happened with the previous chief?
So in 2015, well, prior to 2015,
Right.
we had 88 firefighters.
Right.
We did have a reduction through the attrition,
Right.
and then through the master plan and the risk assessment, we've increased our staffing levels back to 76. So we're back up to, we have a minimum staff of 15 on duty plus a dispatcher, which is 16, whereas in 2015 we had 17. So we're down 1 body per shift.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks, Peter. We'll
Yes,
go into a break.
thank you, Peter. And as he was saying right there, we are going to throw it to a break, but you can't go anywhere. We got more hard-hitting questions for Peter right after this break. And welcome back to Civic Affairs. So, Peter, As we were talking before the break, it is a challenge to step into the position you were. But for as challenging as it is, what was something that was really fulfilling once you did accomplish it? Something that you said, hey, didn't think I could do it, did it, and it was just something that you could really take a sense of pride in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a couple of things actually that I'd have to say. One was for sure completing the risk assessment and master plan. It took a long time to do that. That was a lot of data collection, and I was really happy to do that. It was a great opportunity for a new chief to walk in and have to be a part of that. So I'm proud of the team that did that. The other thing that I'm proud of right now is that we've got the capital approval through council. We purchased, all firefighters got new bunker gear, the gear that they wear to fight the fires, and we're actually finalizing our purchase right now of our new SCBAs. And so I'm pretty proud of that because it's been a long overdue for us to have that new equipment, and I know that the firefighters will be happy to wear that. So I'm kind of proud of that.
Yeah, I'll congratulate you on that too.
Thanks.
That's quite the accomplishment itself. Andy?
Peter, can you talk a little bit about what we haven't talked about, the relationship between the fire department and the EMS and how important that is to the community?
It is, that's a great point. It's very important that there's healthy relationships there. We work closely with each other. We work out of one hall together, and we do tiered response calls with them as well. It's one thing that we do have a goal is to kind of combine some training, and so that we can kind of see how each other work at the scene, and we're improving that. But it's important that we understand their role, and it's important that they understand our role, and we don't kind of cross those lines, right? So we know what they're going to do, and they know what we're going to do, and that comes from having healthy relationships back at the hall as well.
And when it comes to, you got the call, there's a fire, you have to get out there quick. When you see the cars not always pull over to the side, what is that on your end? And what kind of thoughts are running through your head there?
Yeah, it can be difficult responding to a call. We don't quite have the traffic like we were talking about in Toronto, but we do get some
Great
busy
Northern
streets.
Road and Second Line
Yes.
is a little bit difficult.
It can be, yeah. What we've seen, what we had before in our fire trucks, we had our everything on the top, like lights, siren. Well, the lights are still on top, but sirens and air horns. We've designed a new fire truck when we purchased through our specs. We put everything on the bumpers now. And so there's a little bit more of a straight shot to people's ears, and we've actually noticed a big difference in people separating and moving for us.
Hey, well, that's good news
That's
then.
super.
But it can be difficult, but we still have to follow the Highway Traffic Act.
Absolutely.
We don't get exemptions, and we have to keep control of vehicles and make it safe for everybody.
Right, and when the chief gets the call and he's going to respond to the scene, what is your responsibility fighting that fire?
Well, actually fighting the fire, I don't have to do that anymore. I kind of went through that, but I will go to calls, and what I like to do is support the platoon chiefs and the officers from a logistics standpoint. I've got exceptional people in those roles, and they can handle it, but I'm there for their help, and whatever they need, I'm happy to pitch in and help them out, but from a little bit of a backseat for them. My role is on the administration end, and making sure that everything's in place for everybody so that when they get that call, they're prepared and have the equipment to do it.
Right, well, I definitely have to say, I believe I'm safe. I think we're in pretty good hands with Fire Chief Peter Johnson here. So I thank you immensely for coming in. And for myself, Andy and Peter, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great night.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you for having me.